So maybe we share the agenda just for a minute and then people can reference it later.
Okay, so you want to share screen?
Yep.
Okay, so if we can do that, if people could close their videos except for the interpreter and yourself, Denise.
Okay.
Give me one moment, I apologize.
No problem. So I think the introductions, I think everybody, you all know everybody here, so we can skip over that. We'll review the minutes. I guess Jeannie has a unstable internet connection, so we'll see how that goes. We're going to talk about some future webinar topics. Jeannie's going to talk about job interviewing skills, and she has a PowerPoint. And then the Disability Law Center, Liz Hubbard couldn't be here today, but she is willing to present on that topic. And then we'll discuss an email I sent out, last month about frequency and time of day for future webinars and other topics for the Employment Committee, and schedule our next meeting. So we can stop sharing. Can everybody read the minutes that Bethany posted? We'll just take a minute. It's in the chat if everyone wants to take a minute to look at the minutes. Oh, Betsy Beach is not here. That's who's not here. Just going to give it a couple more minutes. I'm going to try to see if I can contact Betsy.
Betsy is joining right now.
Okay, perfect.
And I've sent the link of captions to Betsy as well.
Thank you. So Jan Luby, motion to accept. Do we have somebody second it? Okay, and Paul has seconded the minutes. Okay, we can stop sharing. Jeannie, can you turn on your screen? Hi there.
Do you want me to share my screen?
Yes, so we're gonna have Jeannie share. If you want to just tell them about your PowerPoint first, and then we'll have you share the screen. And this is about, I'm sorry, Bethany.
Jeannie, I know that you had said that your internet is not stable. I do have the PowerPoint. I could share it from my screen if you'd prefer that.
I think that might be better.
Okay.
Okay.
Give me just 1 second to bring it up. It was, hold on 1 second here. And You should be able to use your mouse now, Jeannie, to control the screen. See if you can take over. You got it? Perfect. Is this not the right one?
This is the right one.
No,
Okay.
that's the right one. It's okay. It's fine. Okay. Okay. So, as we go along, and my presentation is going to be very brief, and I'm going to basically tell you how it was when I was dealing with my students. Remember, my students are very young, and they're not very worldly in terms of knowledge, in terms of the regular people who have already gone into the community and actually experienced it. So we're talking about students who have no experience whatsoever. And so this PowerPoint has been modified to suit their needs. Okay, so I made it more visible so that because our children love to see visible, rather than just lecturing to them, I set everything up with visual aids. And this is very generic. Again, it really depends on the audience that I'm working with. Now, the audience that's more focused with the interview itself, in terms of the question or challenging questions and so forth, perhaps maybe some legal questions, stuff like that, I might be going back and forth on that. Some are more interested in learning about the process of an interview, how to introduce the interpreter that they're going to be using in their interview. And so we did some role playing as well. And so we did some practicing, and so I put a PowerPoint up for them to do some role playing as well. So like I said, every PowerPoint that I made was situational and it was always modified. So I started out with the dressing and the grooming, of course, because the first impression is a lasting impression. And then I assigned them in order as far as priority was concerned. Okay, and basically with the dress code, I basically did do's and don'ts. That was self-explanatory. And then I moved on where it seems like I've lost control for some reason. Okay, so I did a version of showing a male how they dressed and how a female would dress. Now, this is more of a professional level, dressing for success, depending on the job that you're applying for, depending on the company you're applying to. And, so there is a dress code that will vary, that has variations according to the type of industry that you're looking to get employed with. Now, some of the people in the audience said, is it necessary to dress? I said, well, there are some places where you can use slacks. I gave some, illustration of when it was appropriate and not inappropriate. So I gave them choices. So I didn't want to make it too concrete. So basically I showed them the line of clothing here, the inventory. And like we noticed the jeans, I said, now that person may be looking for a job at a mechanic shop. So therefore it would be, it wasn't necessary for that individual to wear a suit, but wearing jeans with a clean dress shirt or something like that, they would be appropriate for a mechanic's job if you're going into an automotive industry to work in a shop. Yeah. And so basically everything was a lot of visuals. Bell bottoms were acceptable, dress shoes were acceptable. And there's a whole plethora of wardrobe that you could use. And so I gave certain styles and fashions for them to choose. So pretty much a lot of the visual aids I use are really self-explanatory. We then had discussions, and for this one, for example, I said, students, why don't you point out what you thought was inappropriate for an interview and stuff like that. So they, addressed things such as, earrings, so I tried to make my PowerPoints a little more interactive rather than just me lecturing, because I wanted them to get involved and basically say which was appropriate, which was not appropriate, because I wanted their input. I wanted them to really be a part of the process. And so in between a lot of the pictures I explained, so once your dress code is appropriate, then how do you present yourself with body language? That was the next best thing, you know. You want to show your ability that you are showing interest, that you're alert, you're paying attention, you're attentive, you know. So I gave all these different situations of body language and said which looks negative and which looks positive. So, and there we basically used visual aids again. Now, this is a necessity, you know, for the students that we work with, as you know. And so they do rely on interpreters, and therefore, when they go in there, you know, they think that the interpreter is going to take care of everything for them as their helper. But no, we want to educate our consumers to understand that the interpreter is just a conduit and just basically, you know, bound by confidentiality and so forth. We had to explain all that, and that it was upon you, the participant, the applicant, to take charge of your own interview. And then we did some role playing afterwards. And then we utilized some of the interpreters within the school system that we already have on staff here to also partake in that role playing. So they would show up, and this would be like similar to what a real situation would look like when they go for a job interview and then the interpreter shows up. Okay, because a lot of people were very uncomfortable because they didn't know what the process looked like. So we did a lot of that role playing right here in the classroom. Yeah, I'm having a little time controlling the monitor here. I'm sorry about that. But pretty much going down the line, we're showing the role of the interpreter.
I can help scroll, Jeannie, if you're having issues. If you just want to tell me to go to the next slide, I can do that for you.
Yeah, and so that would be nice. And so basically you can move on right here. So basically it was like, you know, showing who the interpreter was and who's who. Okay, next slide, please, right there. Okay, so we talked about, you know, preparation for your interpreter for a job interview. Okay, so the first thing that would come up to mind is the first impression, which is a lasting impression. Okay, so you need to be prepared. You need to meet with your interpreter to make sure that the interpreter is on site. Meet with your interpreter first, and then share your resume with the interpreter, because there's going to be certain terminologies that there may be certain signs that the consumer may want to have you use so they can understand their cue of the vocabulary that's being used. Okay, so those are the pros of having a little debriefing with your interpreter. Okay, many of the signs, of course, the interpreters already know. However, there might be certain things that are very specific that you may want to share with the interpreter that may not be relevant to the interpreter. So therefore, you would take this time to explain that to the interpreter during your prep time before going into the actual interview. You know, and many employers basically, we ask ourselves a question, do they know how to use an interpreter? No, they don't. And so basically the interviewee really has to explain the role of the interpreter, saying, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm the applicant for the position. And I just want to let you know that I have an interpreter here for our services that's going to, you know, facilitate communication for the both of us. Okay, so this is, we kind of did that role playing there with the eye contact and how to introduce the interpreter so that the employer would not be confused as to why that third person was there. Okay, so we did a lot of that. We did training and stuff like that. So it was a small, logistics was also another thing we discussed. You know, sound environment and where the logistics of where a person should sit, so forth, so they can see the interpreter, you know, lighting and stuff like that, to be able to get access to all the information. So that's a nice thing that, you know, that the interviewee needs to explain to both the employer and the interpreter as well. It's their preference. And that's pretty much, you know, straightforward. You know, looking for, you know, whether they're looking for a job, they might need helping with language in terms of writing, you know, because sometimes, you know, some consumers will use an interpreter to help them translate for site translation, and that's okay. So we discussed that. But we explained what they can do and what they cannot do. Okay. So the type of questions that normally come up in everyday communication. Okay, I see that you brought an interpreter with you. Does that mean that I'm going to have to bring an interpreter every day you come to work? No. I am an independent individual, so we teach them how to advocate that it's not necessary for them to have an interpreter. But during the interview process, and there may be times during the interim of their employment that they may need an interpreter, such as special announcements, special meetings, certain updates that, you know, that the entire company may have a special meeting and so forth. But as far as their everyday job, in terms of what their job description was, no. But you would have to explain and say, these are times that I will need an interpreter. And you're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, now, of course, this is a pandemic period right now, so, you know, we can't do that. There's no handshaking at the moment. You know, we can do the elbow, you know, you know, and so some people, you know, do high fives and so forth like that. So we practiced that because of COVID, all that was out the window. So just to show, you know, probably the best you can probably get is a smile with your eyes, you know, with your eyebrows. And the best you probably do is maybe an elbow contact, and that's about it. You know, and so a lot of this can be explained on Zoom. You know, a lot of this would be tweaked as well. And then on this presentation here, which we felt that was very important, you know, we had a separate little meeting about this where we took an extra time for a different opportunity to explain to, you know, for professional in terms of helping, being a helper and so forth, you know, because we don't want the candidate or the applicant to lose that potential or the possibility of gaining employment. So there were certain questions that should be avoided to ask. So this is where, you know, we talked about, you know, helping stuff like that, because a lot of times people feel that that's inappropriate to ask certain questions and they leave. But we kind of shift the direction, because a lot of times employers may ask inappropriate questions, and we wanted people to know their rights in terms of what they should answer and how they should answer it. And so these were practice questions, various practice questions on how they would address these questions when they come up during an interview. So these were the various different scenarios that may come up. And then, you know, in our role play, like I said, most of our students are young, and then usually think that the interview is done and then they leave. And I say, no, when you're done with the interview, they will usually prompt you and say, do you have any questions of me? That is the opportunity we wanted to teach our candidates, that they should think about these questions that they may want to pose to their potential employer. Okay, so these were some of the samples that I set up for them, you know, that they would know ahead of time, such as the research in terms of the company they're going to, and how they should, you know, research all this information before going to the meeting. And that PowerPoint can be, you know, is very flexible, can be modified according to the audience of who you're teaching, in terms of the age and type of employment according to the applicant and the job that they're seeking. Any questions at this time?
Oops.
Oh, I'll let you go first, Jeannie. Go ahead.
Oh,
I mean, sorry.
okay. No, well, I just want to say, I don't really have a question. I think it's a fabulous PowerPoint. I think it's really, really well done. And it's perfect, I think, for anybody, not just students. A lot of people don't know how to interview adults as well. So, and I'm certainly the people that I'm serving now. So it's really fabulous. I think it's great. Just wanted to thank you.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank you too. So do you think this would be a good webinar topic for the commission on just for general employment best practices or something like that? Jeannie?
Yes, it can be tweaked a little bit to, you know, suit that need. I would say so.
Okay. So maybe I can, so what I thought we would be discussing kind of at this meeting is maybe future webinar topics. So I was thinking that, I mean, everybody can benefit from what you were talking about. So I think there's no better topic going forward. As a committee, is this a good topic, and how often do you think we should be doing these topics? Do you think maybe every month we come up with a new topic or every other month? Betsy? You're on mute.
You're muted, Betsy.
PowerPoint's really good. And I think with interviewing, the more interactive you can be, like I like that there's pictures and people can pick them out and talk about it. And I'm wondering, the only thing I'm wondering is if there's a way to like have people actually practice at the webinar a little bit, if somebody wanted to do a little practicing. That's one thought. And I think if we do just a webinar every like 3 months or something, like 4 times a year, do a couple of webinars.
Bethany, you were talking about breakout room interviews.
I was just thinking the way that Jeannie's PowerPoint presentation, it'd be very easy to have people from the committee be in various breakout rooms with people that maybe RSVP for a webinar. So you can pre-assign them to breakout rooms. And just the way that she broke it down, you could start with just, each topic. So do a breakout room, quick practice, come back to the webinar, review. Breakout room, practice, come back, just an idea.
So in your vision, Bethany, would everybody be going to the breakout room for every topic, or are you talking about like having different breakout rooms for different questions or topics or practicing, or one person at a time? How were you envisioning that?
I would just see it that you guys might want to go down the agenda, go down the topics similar to Jeannie's PowerPoint, how she has it set up. Considering the fact that everyone can benefit from the practice. How do you usually do it, Jeannie? Like when you're training students?
Yes. The PowerPoint is a 3-day, we get together for 3 days over a 3-day period. Okay, with the built-in mouse and mock interview. So I build in these mock interviews. So, and I do have breakout rooms and I have different people in there, doing mock interviews as a potential employer. Now, I'm not sure if that would work on Zoom, but we could assign different people in there and have mock interviews in these little breakout sessions. But what I can talk about, we can do, we can have also webinar series. Basically, mention, say, okay, so there are people who registered for this series. Then we could have another webinar for another, the role of the interpreter. So we actually, instead of, breakout rooms, we could also have series. And so, and then maybe the legal questions, on what they ask and not they ask and so forth. So you can break them out into series of webinars. And so basically people can pick and choose what's related to them, what their weaknesses are, and they have a preference of where they can go to that webinar specifically for what they want, to improve and build up their skills for. So that's where we can, assign different mock interviews according to that category. Okay, I actually, during my presentation, brought in people from the outside community to bring in here, because, once I practice with my students, they're used to me, but I wanted to bring in people from the outside that my students did not know, and hearing people that did not know sign language and therefore rely on the interpreter at the school to do the real role play of what it's like to do an interview with the person who doesn't know sign language. Okay. So, I'm not sure if that would work or something like that, but I think that would work though.
I think it's a really interesting idea. So maybe this is something we can kind of try to think about over the course before our next meeting about how it would look, how we could break out different topics, maybe who could be in the different breakout rooms, and maybe somebody stays in the waiting room as we do the breakout rooms, and they can go in a waiting room to talk with different people and get different skill sets or things like that. So I think that's really an interesting way to go forward and have a series so that people can look at that. So maybe between this and our next meeting, that people can kind of think about it. So before our next meeting, we'd have more of a thought process and how that could happen. So, anybody else have any other comments on Jeannie's presentation? Jan?
Well, just none that I didn't make in the chat already. I like the idea of a series because there's a lot to cover in this PowerPoint. So I think that would be great. At least, I would think at least 3 sessions. And you could even have people maybe sign up if they want to do a mock interview for the last session or something. And because I think, I don't know how it would work with breakout rooms. I'm kind of new to that. And it might be kind of messy. And, if you have a lot of people, it might be hard to do everyone in that session. Maybe, if they made appointments and we had 15-minute interviews or something. But yeah, I think it's a good idea to do this. And as to how often we want to do it, I would think that if we're doing a series, we wouldn't want to have them really far apart. So if we were doing a series, maybe once a week, and then the next series would be, 2-3 months down the line or something like that.
Yeah, I like the idea of a series. I think it can create a following and things like that. So maybe we can all think about how we could bring that together and just share your thoughts with me. If you can just email me your thoughts and we can kind of brainstorm how we can go about making that happen. So good. Jan? You're muted. You're muted, Jan.
Sorry. Do we have a way to do a survey of what kind of workshops people would want? The commission's got that mailing list, maybe that could be used, or I'm not sure how we would get word out, but I'm just wondering if that might be something, because there's probably things we haven't thought of that are issues for people that they might want.
It's a great idea. Betsy?
How many people came to the last webinar on resumes? I'm just wondering if I don't know that we're talking about a lot of people that want to do webinars. Bethany, you probably know.
Yes.
So we didn't have that many people, but because it was recorded, now it's on the webpage. So in our new webpage for video archive. And as I'm listening to you guys talk about this, I do think to kind of generate an audience, if it was registration, we might have more people attending. And we'd also perhaps want to ask if they're willing to be recorded, because then we can also put it on the webpage if they want to do the breakout rooms and so on and so forth, or the mock interviews, however we'd want to set those up. And additionally, if we did have registration, then we'd also have a better idea of what we would need, who would need to be in the rooms for communication access. Ensuring that interpreters are in the breakout rooms if needed.
And Bethany, in the breakout rooms, you can also create a waiting list. So there could be, you have 5 minutes and you could have 3 people lined up,
Yeah.
and they could have their
time
list. Yeah,
limit.
and just say you're in
Yeah.
breakup room 1, and then you go and wait in the breakout room. So, so that's okay. So something to think about. Thank you. There's a question from Jeannie. Do we know how many views were recorded from that video? Would you know that, Bethany?
I can find that out. But so that would, I'm not sure if that was on our YouTube page, and we just put it on the webpage. I can come back to you guys with that information.
All right, thank you. So the other topic that we were, let me find it. The other topic that we, I thought would be a good webinar would be the Disability Law Center has recently created a publication on asking for reasonable accommodations in the workplace. So that might even be something, and again, I don't know about, I do like the idea of bringing other people in. So that's another topic of how maybe even some role playing in that situation as well. Like if, how to bring things up and things like that. So that might be a way, to make that one interactive. Does everyone think that would be a good future topic? I have no idea if it's an ASL, but Liz Hubbard is willing to come to our next meeting and give us a little presentation, and we can discuss that with her if everybody's up for that. Betsy? Oh. You're muted.
You're muted.
They came to HLAA.
Okay.
Talked about being a hearing aid user and interviewing and some ADA stuff. I mean, it would be good to invite her and see what they can present.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
All right. So she said she will, Liz Hubbard will come to our next meeting so we can also discuss how we can make that into either, a one-time or interactive or something like that too. So let's see where we are on the agenda. So talking about frequency and time of day. So there was some email that people thought later in the day would be a good time for the webinar. What is everybody's thoughts on time of day that we would have this webinar? Do they like late day, like 2 to 4, or an evening? So Bethany's thinking 6 to 8. What else do we have? Anybody else have any feedback on that? So we have late afternoon. Can everybody weigh in on that question? You have another evening is better?
I have a question I'd like to ask.
Okay,
Jeannie,
go ahead, Jeannie.
any specific reason why you wanted to recommend evenings? Because I was thinking of job searches, I would imagine that, would they be available during the daytime, such these potential employers?
So we have another late afternoon.
Because, we're for job seekers, you know what I'm saying?
Bethany, you mentioned 6 to 8. Can you tell us why you think that would be a better time than late afternoon?
So I think that interview skills are things that aren't just needed for people that are searching for employment, but people that are searching for better employment, different employment. So we do have people that may have jobs, but need assistance with building skills to get better jobs.
That's a good point.
And also a lot of times the people that are able to participate, say in facilitating mock interviews, their work schedules may allow, it may be better in the evening.
And then if we were talking about also the work accommodations, these are people that are already working. So they might not be able to attend during a work day as well. So Betsy?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the employers that came to the job fair, and I'm wondering if any of them would volunteer their time to conduct a mock interview. Like, I thought the people from Amazon were really personable, and maybe we could use our employer contacts and have them come and help us out with this, with maybe doing some interviews.
I think that's a great thing to have a topic and then have people, if we have a bunch of rooms, then you can have a bunch of employers that they want to just ask them some random questions and maybe give them some feedback as well. So maybe that breakout room could be You get to ask a couple questions, see how they do, and then give them immediate feedback on what they could do better and if they want to come back again and practice another time. So I think interaction is a great skill that a lot of people could benefit for. So if we can go back, now that we've had a little discussion, if we can go back to whether evening or late afternoon is better. Does anybody change their mind or have any different opinions? Jan? And you're muted, okay?
Yep. I just think, you know, it depends on what kind of job they have. Not everybody has a day job like we do. You know, if they're looking for a better job, but they're waitressing or they're whatever, working at Amazon at night, or, you know, I don't know. So, and also it would be when we're available to do it. I mean, if Jeannie's going to run it, you know, I think that Jeannie should be able to weigh in there on what's comfortable for her. You don't want to bump into dinner time. Or Jeannie's saying we could offer 2 sessions, one in early afternoon, one in late afternoon or evening. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe two, yeah. That might be a good thing just to do, maybe do one like 2 to 4 and 6 to 8. And Bethany's saying lunch or a lunch session. One in the morning and one in the late afternoon. I think if one would have to be not during the day. So I don't know, maybe 12 to 2. I know the lunch and learns that OSL does is 12 to 2 and maybe 6 to 8. Betsy?
Yeah, if we do advanced registration and we see that, you know, 12 people are registered for the evening and only 3 for the afternoon, then we'll have an idea. And maybe we could, I don't know. I mean, in a way, we have to learn when we can get people.
Should
by having them sign up, and we could move the people from the afternoon to the evening if we find that that's not as popular.
Is it possible, could I ask Ernest a question? Would it be possible for us to do some kind of questionnaire through the Commission on the Deaf and Hard of Hearing about topics they're interested in and what time of day is a preference? Is that something we could send out, Ernest?
So I do know that last night that this was spoken about at the commission meeting,
Okay.
as far as if people should, if they prefer a 4 to 6 meeting or a 6 to 8. And the majority of people said that they preferred a 6 to 8 meeting,
Okay.
due to all the concerns that we spoke of earlier. You know, work schedules and just family responsibilities and things like that, that 6 to 8 was easier.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe if we register and nobody signs, we do 2 different, I think the 12 to 2, because that's lunch, so somebody could at least pop in for lunch if they were working, and then the 6 to 8. And then if we register and nobody is registered for one of them, we know that's not an interest. So maybe if we just do 2 for now, see how it goes, and then like I said, if nobody registers for it, then we don't have it. So that would tell us that that didn't work out. So that's what I'm proposing, that we do 2 of them, one from 12 to 2 and one to 6 to 8, and people have to register for it. How does that sound to everyone?
Hi, this is Ernest. Just to answer your question, yes. I can send out a survey and find out, you know, what time, is of interest to the community. And then basically I can send that out. And then if you want us to basically send it out as a blast, I'd be willing to do that. Just let me know the content in terms of how you want to present that, how you want to phrase that. And I could also do a vlog on that as well. So we can send it out by email. We could also do a vlog on that as well. And so just let me know. And then basically, you know, we can take a poll whatever it is. And then once we get that, then we know which way we can go. We can find out, it gives us a pulse on the community in terms of what fits their schedule.
So what other topics should we, other than the time of day, what other topics do you think we should have in the questionnaire? Anybody have any other topics to include?
I'm not sure what you're asking, so maybe that's why you're not getting.
Okay.
So, we're talking about just the interviewing, what they want.
I think we're just saying what kind of, if we send out a questionnaire from the employment committee, what other things should we ask if they're interested in? Like, what other things should we have? If we're going to do a questionnaire, we should do more than one question. Like,
Okay, absolutely,
topics.
absolutely. So we should give them choices of this
Yes.
could do. So I really strongly feel like it should be two separate things. Email about the interviewing workshop and when they're going to sign up and all that. And then a separate email going out at another time that says, these are other topics. And if you have any other ideas, let us know, like one of those where there's a blank other, or something. I think, yeah, they should be separate.
Jeannie?
Yeah, I'm not really sure if this is relevant or not, but during that survey, I agree that they should be separate, whether it's, we have the interview and the time of day and stuff like that. The committee, we need to know what's happening in their employment. So I think that is interesting to know what their concerns are and what they need and what they would like to have access to and what they're looking for. Okay, now let's talk about job searching. Let's say that they have been job, maybe they want something, questions related to job searching. Maybe they're finding barriers to job searching. And so we can find out what these barriers are, perhaps maybe they didn't have access to interpreters or access to communication. We need to figure out what they're facing, to get an idea of what they're actually facing out there in the community. And then finally, for the questions, we can provide a workshop and say, these are the topics that we can provide, based upon their real life experience of what they're facing out there. Because we don't know what they're facing out there. We can just keep it very, generic and say, what are your concerns about, seeking for a job? Have you gotten your accommodation that you requested? Are you satisfied with the quality of the work there? Is there opportunity for growth in your employment while you're there? And, it's because some of them, they may have different types of questions for those who are already employed, but looking to go up the ladder or do something better, so we can address topics and create them according to their needs as they get further advanced. I apologize. I don't know if that's on par in terms of what we're trying to do, but I just thought I'd mention that.
And Jan Luby also said online applications. So, but I think maybe if we just say we're looking to develop future topics, what time of day works for you, and what are some of the things you're interested in, and leave it open-ended and see what people say. And then, like I said, I think we have a good, I think everybody can benefit from requesting accommodations, and everybody can benefit from job interviewing skills. So maybe we'll focus on those two next, but maybe in the next couple weeks, we can just send something out. And I'll send something to everybody and you can tweak it or whatever, of just a very basic, that doesn't take a lot of time to do, but just try to get the feel of the community and what they're looking for. So that's what I'm kind of thinking. Anybody have any other comments on that? Okay, so let's go back to, let me see our agenda here, 1 second.
I just, sometimes people fill out questionnaires and sometimes they don't.
Right.
I don't know that we can count on a lot of response. So.
Yeah, but at least I think if it's only a few questions and we don't give them this big long thing, that maybe they'll get back to us, but at least we can move forward with those. Like if we get that, questionnaire out in the next few weeks, then we can set up a date so we can at least get some chatter on that. So does anybody have any other things they wanted to discuss today?
I just want to follow up quickly with what Jan just put in the comments about online applications and accessibility might be a really good topic. Just to see what problems people are having, not only filling out applications, but I know now that, well, not now, it's probably been the case for a while, but there's usually an assessment or a test or something that people have to participate in to, you know, go to the next step. And I think some people have a difficulty with that.
And what do you mean by going to the next step? And can you explain what you're referring to?
I'm thinking in particular of somebody that I had apply at Amazon recently, and they were required to do a. I'm coming to a blank as to what it was called specifically, but it was like a 15-minute personality kind of test.
Okay.
They had some difficulty with because of language.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Betsy?
Yeah, I know certain departments at Home Depot give you a little math and reading tests, you know, things that you have to calculate things, you know, to use around the home to build things or whatever. So sometimes you are faced with a little bit of a, and unions have pre-apprenticeship tests in math and other things. So sometimes you're faced with some academic things.
Jan?
And I think just to piggyback on what Paul was talking about, if you do a Walmart application, which, you know, or there's any number of online applications where they do the kind of personality test that Paul was talking about, and they're very confusing, and they're compound sentences, like if this happened, then this, and then blah blah, and then what would you do? And it's not structured very well for deaf people. They're really hard to get through. And I've helped a lot of people get through them because they're just impossible. They look at the question and go, what? Yeah. Because, you know, they're not interpreted on the test, you know, on the,
Yeah.
And they try and trick you. They'll say, you know, there's tricks to it. And I had a buddy at, was it Home Depot? Yeah, it was Home Depot or Lowe's. It was Lowe's, who was in HR, and she would let me know, because how you answer those personality questions, you get either a green light, a yellow light, or a red light. If it comes up red, they don't even consider you. If it's yellow, maybe they will, depending. And they're looking, I guess the test, if you do one really extreme or the other, you know, you're better off if you go to the middle ground, like strongly agree, strongly disagree, or sort of agree, you know, those kind of questions. But they'll ask you things like, you know, what would your classmates say about you? What would your coworkers say about you? And I've had, you know, so many deaf people go, I don't know what they'd say about you. You know, it's like, so yeah, it's, you know, and then it's multiple choice. And sometimes none of those answers fit. So they're very difficult to get through. And I think a lot of people struggle with them, especially deaf people, because they're just structured so.
So do you think that a deaf individual is more at a disadvantage than a non-deaf individual because of the secondary language possibly?
Yeah, it's not that the language is difficult. It's just that they do these run-on questions, and it's really hard to even figure out what they're looking for. I don't know, maybe Jeannie can, or Ernest can speak to that some.
Jeannie or Ernest, do you have any comment on that? So no comments on that? So I would say, okay, Jeannie. Jeannie, go ahead.
I'm really not sure how to answer that question, but first, it is a language barrier, that I can tell you, okay? Because they do have to understand the question before they can answer it. So it is a linguistic barrier. Okay, now, and then once you understand, then you can answer that question. So I would label that as a language barrier for sure. And sometimes, sometimes people are just blunt, deaf people are usually blunt and straightforward. And that culturally may not mesh in the hearing community, with spoken people. And Ernest is saying, yes, I agree. That's why sometimes they need a CDI, to translate those questions, because they benefit from a CDI, certified deaf interpreter, because a lot of times, deaf people may not understand the question because it is written in English, which is not their indigenous language. Okay, so a CDI would have to translate that, site translation, to give that. So I know that I did during a coffee hour, which was held about 3 weeks ago, I signed, we had a CDI working with us at the same time I was giving a presentation. And a CDI does use a different structure of sign language than I do. Okay, so CDIs their expertise is really, matching the indigenous language that individual may utilize, whatever the case may be, because not everybody uses the same modality of sign language. Okay, so when you do that survey, I think I would like to use a CDI and bring that person in there. So if you develop something, then I basically could bring in a CDI, pay them to do that, and then actually create a vlog to, answer that, to translate that survey.
So my question on that would that be a reasonable accommodation for somebody that's deaf to request that for something due to it being a linguistic or a language barrier? Could that be argued as a reasonable accommodation if they feel uncomfortable answering that?
Absolutely. I think so. And yeah, the problem is in some places, I had somebody working in a warehouse position. It wasn't Amazon, but he got the job. He had to go in by himself and sit down at the computer and do this application. They wouldn't allow anyone to go with him. And he did get the job, but he also, he wasn't like strictly ASL. He was kind of hard of hearing and he signed. So he, and what I think, but it's some places are just not, they don't allow it. I think you'd have an argument there that they have to make it accessible, but.
Jeannie, you
I
had
don't know.
to add?
Yeah, I would just, I would agree with Ernest that you would use a CDI, so because they would have to translate that, because it is a barrier, and that's what I had stated in the beginning, because the CDI basically can go through that and actually be able to, rephrase those questions in a better way in the indigenous language to the individual. And so, it's called a reasonable accommodation to the company. That has to be, made known to them. Because they can say, my communication access is not through the English format that you have on this computer, but if it's translated, not where somebody's giving me the answer, but they can just basically show me that, this is what it means. And so therefore that allows the candidate to answer that question accordingly.
So this might be a great thing for the Disability Law Center to address and give information on that. Like that is something, if you are looking for employment, that if that is an obstacle, then I don't know how many people know Liz Hubbard, but when you mention the Disability Law Center and that you're going to contact them, or this is your rights, and she will help in any way she can. So I think that might be something we can talk to Liz about at our next meeting. So does anybody have anything else they want to discuss at this meeting? I did want to just mention one other thing, that we want to make sure that in our minutes, I think Betsy wasn't here, or somehow they're not in our minutes, that Sharon had passed away, so she's no longer going to be in our minutes going forward. So I know it's a sad loss for everyone. So again, we'll remove her from the committee for future reference. So when would we like to meet again? And we can kind of, like I said, Liz Hubbard will be at our next meeting. By then, we should have our questionnaire about timing, and I'll, like I said, the things that we talked about, if anybody wants to send me any emails, and we'll try to put something together. I'm thinking mid to late, what about 6 weeks? Is that what we were kind of thinking? So that would, and that brings us to. So the 21st of January. Does that sound good for everybody? Thursday at 2:30?
I'm fine with that for a meeting, but are we going to be planning any of these workshops?
I think we can do
Anytime
some.
soon?
I think we need to kind of put together the questionnaire and have some more format before the next meeting. So maybe we
Okay.
can do individual talking before then, get a questionnaire out, and then we can kind of go from there so we have more information. Unless people want to go sooner than the 21st of January. I know the holidays are coming up, and that's, difficult too. All right, so why don't we say, because of the holidays and everything, January 21st, but I'll be sending emails and correspondence that I hope everybody gets back to, so we can kind of have some things moving in that direction. By that meeting, we'd have a little bit more, some direction. Oops. Okay. So I think, so if that doesn't work and you find out it doesn't work, let me know. If not, it's going to be January 21st at Thursday at 2:30. And again, I'll send some correspondence in between those dates to kind of work on some of the things we discussed at this meeting. All right. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you. Thanks, Denise, and Bethany, and
Thank you.
everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone. Stay
Bye.
safe.
Happy holidays.
Have a good
Thank
holiday.
you all as well.
Thank you. Thank you, our interpreter and our cart reporter.